Okay, so for our topic for this project, we decided to cover the issues of racism in sports. We wanted to start off with a quote from Donald Sterling, the former owner of the Clippers, that said, "Don't bring any black people to my game, including Magic Johnson."
See, unfortunately, you have to get serious. And that's what happens when controversial comments are made. And plain and simple, Magic is here because your name was the name mentioned in the recordings of racist remarks believed to be made by Clippers owner Donald Sterling. Plain and simple. When you heard those comments, Magic, what was your reaction?
Well, Sage, I was really upset. You can't understand how hurt I was, and also I was hurt for all African Americans and all minorities.
The second quote that we decided to use was a quote from Phil Jackson that referenced LeBron James' friends and the group of people that he was around as a quote-unquote posse.
The title for young African Americans is the word posse. I had nothing but respect for him as a coach, for what he was able to do. Obviously, he was at the helm of one of my favorite player of all time, MJ, and also been there growing up and watching with the Lakers. But I got nothing for him.
You said you had respect for him?
Yeah.
Up until...
Yeah.
With all of these different examples occurring in sports, we decided to take to social media, which included Facebook as well as Twitter, to see what people thought and if they felt that there was actually an issue with racism in sports today. One quote that we managed to get was from a good friend of mine who was on the basketball team at Grand Canyon University, and it's Keontae Vernon. He said, "That's a hard question because it all depends on what position you're talking about. Like, obviously not us, meaning between the players there's not racism, but others like refs or other older people that are involved in the NCAA, NBA, or NFL, I believe can be." This lack of belief that there's a problem with racism in sports could be attributed to new racism, which is the widespread belief that racism no longer exists and civil rights legislation created an equal playing field for all. Our Facebook poll yielded a little bit different of a result, with more people favoring that yes, there was an issue with racism in sports, rather than our Twitter poll, who had a majority saying no, there is not an issue with racism in sports. We have hypothesized that this difference on the Facebook poll is because it was composed of college students, whereas the Twitter poll was composed of anywhere from high school up until the college level. So maybe the Facebook poll, being that it was all college students, were a little bit more educated on the area and understood that there was an issue in sports today. We also conducted a second survey on Facebook that showed a little bit more of a variety in options, being yes, no, maybe, and not sure. The total responses we received were 81, and you can see the breakdown of the percentages right here. Of the 81 total responses we received on this survey, 27.16% were male, 70.37% were female, and 2.47% preferred to not say. Of the females, 19 said yes, 13 said no. Of the males, 5 said yes, and 10 said no. This data helped us reach the conclusion that females do see a problem with racism in sports, whereas males typically do not see this problem with racism in sports. Another quote we were able to receive was from a fellow college student and good friend of mine, Trevor. He said, "Yeah, it is an issue, but it's blown up every time it comes up, if that makes sense. I don't think a lot of people are racist, but you always see the ones who are. Not trying to defend it at all, but I believe the majority of people aren't, but not by a lot." Being that he is a college student, and as I said before, he is more educated on the matter, he is able to see that racism is indeed an issue in sports. He says that the majority is not racist, however the percentage is not by a lot. That does show that even though the majority is not racist and they are not going to have racial tendencies during sports, it is still an issue and it needs to be addressed. Now moving on to the topic of white privilege in sports. The following clip is going to be a video of Cam Newton, the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, and the NFL MVP last season. This video is showing you Cam Newton's various celebrations and dances after he either gets a first down or a touchdown. Cam Newton is known for this kind of behavior and also grabbing the football and running it over to a child to give him a little piece of the game. While for me, I see no issue in this, and if I was that child getting that game ball, I would be thrilled. Some people did have an issue. These backlashes included a mother writing into the NFL addressing Cam Newton, talking about his behavior and how it was arrogant and these struts of cockiness were not good for what a role model should be showing to young children. On the other hand, you see a video here of Travis Kelce, the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. When he dances, what are the backlashes, you may be asking? Well, the fact is, when Travis Kelce celebrated in the end zone, there were no backlashes. He was actually invited onto a TV show and was encouraged to dance more. Here's the clip of that now.
Hitting the Quan in the game is never going to look like me hitting the Quan on Fox.
Right.
It's a game time deal.
You're in the moment.
I'm in the moment.
But this
I
is
feel
our
it.
game time right
Yeah,
now.
this is it. Yes.
Yes. There it is.
That's what I'm talking about.
Come on.
Yeah.
This difference in the reaction to the dancing of these two athletes is a classic example of white privilege. Travis Kelce got away with dancing with no problem, whereas when Cameron Newton tries to do it, there's backlashes and people do complain. This topic of white privilege leads well into the next topic of oppression. An example of this is when Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee during the national anthem. When Colin Kaepernick decided to do this peaceful style of protest, there was an uproar in society. One tweet said, "White people. Black people should protest peacefully." Black person. Takes a knee during the national anthem. White people. No, not like that. This is a perfect example of someone trying to limit somebody else's rights, as well as white privilege, thinking that white people can dictate what a black person can and cannot do. Now moving on to hegemonic masculinity, which is the idea that male behavior is ideal and is encouraged in sports. In order to be successful, male-dominant type behaviors are needed. An example of this is when Simone Biles was doing quite well in the Olympics this last year. She was compared to the likes of Michael Phelps as well as Usain Bolt. This comparison to Michael Phelps is an example of oppression. Simone Biles, being a successful black woman, was being compared to a successful white man. This is also an example of hegemonic masculinity because it is making reference that Simone Biles' actions need to be more quote-unquote male-like in order to be successful. Gymnastics also promotes the ideas of hegemonic femininity. While yes, everyone is expected to compete at a very high level, they are also expected to maintain what is considered feminine and beautiful. Her response to this comparison was perfect. It was not that she was like Michael Phelps, it was that she was the first Simone Biles the world had ever seen. In conclusion, it is clear that racism and oppression are still very much an issue in sports. The same can be said for the double standard between men and women, where women are expected to be what is considered feminine and beautiful, but competing at a high level, and hegemonic masculinity showing that the ideal behavior is to be dominant and aggressive for men.